Welcome to Experimarketing, the podcast where we innovate, create, and appreciate. Powered by Mostly Automotive Marketing with Matt Wilson. Here's the host of Experimarketing, Chief Experimarketer, Colin Carasquillo.
Hello there, ladies, gentlemen, Experimarketers of all ages. It's Colin Carasquillo here, Chief Experimarketing Officer at Experimarketing. Without further ado, let's bring back my co-host, Matt Wilson.
Yes, hello, sir.
There he is. How are you, my friend?
Good, Colin. Good to talk to you, man.
Yes, you as well. It's been a little while. I want the people out there, our fellow Experimarketers, to know that we're still here. We just needed to take a brief hiatus to think about some awesome Experimarketing topics to dive into for basically the second half of April. This is April 2021 episode, but obviously everyone out there can listen to it to infinity and beyond after this. Matt, how you been, man? What's going on?
Good. Listen, I wanted to look nice for this episode of Experimarketing, so I got a new hat.
A new hat?
Brand new hat. Brand new hat.
It's crisp.
Just for this episode of Experimarketing. There's no sweat on it or anything. Wow,
look at that. I appreciate it. Bringing out your fanciest clothes for Experimarketing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Matt, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
It's our standard little opening here, the questions.
What's your question?
Google My Business, my man. GMB, Google My Business. You know about Google My Business? What are your thoughts on Google My Business?
I've heard of Google My Business. I believe I'm familiar with it. Yes, I've heard of it. And It's pretty important.
I think it's exceptionally important. So on today's episode, Experimarketing, episode 19, this is UGC for GMB. And you know us here in the auto space. We love our acronyms. But UGC, User Generated Content for GMB, Google My Business. We know that there's been an exceptional increase in zero-click searches, essentially a search when someone goes on and says maybe a near me search, right? Let's say Jeep dealer near me, a Google My Business profile will pop up. And instead of clicking on a normal organic ranking or search result, or even perhaps a paid ad, users on their mobile devices are seeing that Google My Business profile, and they're either hitting the website button to the dealership's website, they're hitting the call button, the directions button, whatever it may be. But that is what we will call a zero-click search result. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that would be a ZCSR, zero-click search result.
That's too complicated with all the acronyms that we got going on. But basically, an increase in zero-click search results over, not just what's happened with COVID over the past year, but even prior to that, we've seen this massive increase just because of consumer shopping behavior. People are mobile, right? People are very, very mobile in this day and age. They're using their mobile devices for their research, their shopping, so on and so forth. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get into that, as always, I need to thank Jim McCarthy. Jim McCarthy made the awesome introduction for Experimarketing. Jim McCarthy voiceovers. You can see any of his additional work, or I should say, listen to his additional work at jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com. And of course, our friends at Dealer Marketing Magazine. Dealer Marketing Magazine has their expert panel of individuals, one of which we have on the show today, who really, it's a source where you can go, someone in the automotive space, learn everything about anything in automotive, right? So fixed ops, sales, customer experience, even now we have some new expert panels on there, people that have incubators for the automotive space. If you have an idea you want to have made, there's individuals on there that can help you bring that idea to fruition. Just a really great outlet for those in the automotive space looking for more information or perhaps to take your business to the next level. And lastly, our friends at Auto Lead Star. Auto Lead Star has revolutionized the way that dealers do marketing. They have one-to-one advertising, which is exceptionally important. The right messaging to the right person at the right place, the right time, on the right device, right. You can use the promo code POD50, POD50, POD50 for 50% off your first 3 months on the platform. You can just go to autoleadstar.com to find out more information about that. We'll also have a link once this is living in the YouTube realm. We'll have a link that you guys can click on there as well to access that promotion. Now, I've spoken enough, so let's listen. You have 2 ears, one mouth. Listen twice as much as you speak. let's bring on our first repeat guest, Brent Albrecht, who is the VP of Business Development at Friendemic. There he is. Hello, Brent. How are you? Welcome back to the show.
Hey, guys. How we doing? No, I appreciate you having me back. It was a lot of fun.
Excellent. Well, like I said, we're glad to have you back. You're our first repeat guest, so that's big for us, and thank you so very much for that. You had an awesome contribution to dealer marketing this month in terms of, well, I should say all your contributions are awesome, but this month we're talking about Google My Business, and basically the article talked about getting more traffic to your Google My Business profile with user-generated content. So before we get into that, and I know we know who you are and how incredible you are, but for those that might just be learning of you for the first time, do a little introduction and let's talk about Google My Business afterwards.
Oh, no, absolutely. So yeah, Brent Albrecht here. I'm the VP of Business Development at Friendemic. So I've been there a little over 7 years now. So a long time for me to be in one place. But Friendemic, solely works in the automotive space with auto dealers. And really focus on this niche of what we would say reputation and social media, which is, you can see this year has really expanded to a lot of conversations around Google and Google My Business, because it's just become, so important. I mean, not just for dealers, but all businesses, in what they're trying to do on Google.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And so I know Matt, he says he thinks he knows about it. He's heard of Google My Business. And I know, of course, as an account director, at Silverback Advertising, Matt knows about Google My Business. And I think this is the first thing that dealers, whether they're starting a new operation or have had operations, are like, oh my goodness, I need to get my Google My Business profile optimized. I need to verify it, all these different things. So let's do this in steps. We like to obviously unpack things and educate. So we're talking about Google My Business. Now, for those of us out there who maybe don't know about it, what is Google My Business, Brent?
Yeah, a good way to think about it now, everybody knows Google, right? And you're like, we do searches on Google. And even for a long time, dealers have been, investing in SEO, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, and everything I think the focus has been on is what I'll call the left side of the page, right? You type in a search result and you get all these results in the left side of the page. And that's been the focus. How do I manage what's showing up in the left side of the page? Google My Business, that's the right side of the page, right? And now it's, hey, don't just focus on the left side, right? Let's manage everything people are seeing on Google. And if you look at the right side of the page, it's almost like this brochure for your business. And just like what websites started out as solely an online brochure and became, a way to shop and interact with the business in all kinds of ways, that's what the Google My Business page is becoming. To some extent, it's replacing a lot of the functionality that a website offers.
Mm-hmm. No, and so, I mean, obviously, I love that, focus on the right side of the page. You still need to focus on the left. Don't get it twisted, right? But the fact of the matter is, yes, when dealers have focused solely on the left side of the page with SEO, right, and then paid search, that does dominate the whole left side. Now, yes, move the focus to the right-hand side of the page. And when you even think about it, if you're looking at things on a mobile device, it's actually just stacked. It's not even like you're looking at a left or right-hand side of the page. You should just be looking at the page and saying, how can I optimize and dominate this page, right? I mean, that's it in the grand scheme of things. Now, we know Google. You've said it. Everyone knows Google. Everyone's heard of Google. Why is a Google My Business page? And yeah, I'm sure there's, some SEO values, and I'll just play like I don't know. But why is that Google My Business page so important, Brent?
Again, a lot of ways to think about it, but it's really, it's become like the home page to some extent, or almost like the front door, right? It's so important when people walk in the front door of a dealership, you want someone, watching the front door, someone's there to greet them right away, right? That first experience they have when they walk in your front door is really important. Mm-hmm. Google My Business, is your front door. The first thing they do, right? So many searches begin on Google, and I search for a dealer, right? Ford dealer near me, whatever it is, I'm going to find one, and on the right side, that's their front door. That's going to be my first experience with the dealer, and it's going to set the tone, set the stage. So it's so critical. If they all start there, then you want to have control of that and optimize every interaction that they have on that page.
That's a very valid point, because like you said, instead of necessarily going to the dealership website first, shoppers are going to Google. They're doing these searches, whether it's these near me searches, which also have seen a dramatic increase in near me searches, right? I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that, as I mentioned in the introduction, customers are inherently mobile now. They're using their mobile devices. So they're putting in near me, thinking or knowing that Google will spit something out to them that's relevant to what they're searching. But let's talk about the Google My Business. I mean, first of all, we know what it is now. We know why it's important. It's that front, the front door, the first impression. But there's so many things that go into that. I mean, you have hours of operation on there. You have direct ways to contact the dealership or find directions to that dealership, which most likely then links to whether the person has Google Maps or a regular Maps function will open up that Maps function. You have links that can go through to different service pages or parts departments. You can now even build it out, right? So you have your main Google My Business profile and then a service and or parts department. That's kind of within that, the umbrella. So people are getting the most relevant experience. You have products now. You can actually put your products on there and have people click directly onto those products and then end up on a search results page or vehicle details page. So it's really this very important extension, which you had mentioned, Brent, of the dealership. Think about it as instead of just the brick and mortar front door or your door, which has been your website, your 24/7 showroom. Now you have another point of entry, which is your Google My Business profile, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And the more functionality Google continues to add, the more time is going to be spent on the Google My Business page. I think, right, what, a year or two ago, you'd be like, oh yeah, I look at the Google My Business page, I get the phone number and I check to see if it's open, right? That's what you did.
Right.
Or you click to the website. You're like, I'll do one of those things, I'm done. But now, as you mentioned, Colin, all the product info and everything they have on there, there's so much more time being spent, so many more ways to interact.
I use it for reviews. I go and read reviews. I'm like, I wonder what the food at this place is like. Boom, Google it. Boom, reviews, and right there. And so it's becoming a place that you seek out specific content. Oh, I know where to find that. I'm just going to find it on the Google My Business on the right.
Yeah. Well, and Matt, you mentioned restaurants, and I was thinking about this weekend. It's become with restaurants. You can feel how I don't even need to go to the restaurant website. Yeah. I went search for Mexican food. Here's my choices. Looked at their page. They have photos of the dishes. They have the menu. Yeah. And then they have an integration with Open Table. And I reserved a table right from the Google My Business page. So there was no need to go to the website at all. Yeah. That's a good feel where auto should be headed.
Yeah, but that also brings up a question. And as Colin as the marketing manager, digital marketing manager at an auto group, and I have never had this discussion before, but so essentially you'll be intercepting website traffic, so to speak, right? People will be getting answers to questions they would normally have to get off your website, but they're going to be getting it on Google. So you want to maximize that so people get an answer and find you, but also we spend all our time trying to drive people to our websites. We want traffic to go to our websites. So does that have a negative effect or a positive effect, or is it kind of like cancel each other out?
I think there's be pluses and minuses. I think there's dealers that are going to be somewhat uncomfortable with that notion. Think about if it's my website, I control all the content on the website. I only show you exactly what I want to show you. On Google My Business, that's not the case. Like, I can control some of the content, but as you mentioned, reviews, right? Now consumers are posting reviews. They can post photos. They can post questions. Google even allows users to suggest content, right? I've seen users suggest, here's an alternate phone number for the business. Here's alternate hours. Here's in the Q&A, if you're not answering those questions, a consumer can, someone else can go. And that's a little scary to say, like, well, now people are all going to go there, but I don't have 100% control of what they see. So I think there's going to be some resistance from that angle.
Though, what's interesting, though, is I think a person, like a shopper, a prospect, a layperson, not in the industry, we all have this trust of Google. Oh, well, it's on Google. Yes. It's not like the dealer is trying. The dealer, of course, they're going to tell me, if you vacation shop and you go to a website for a destination and it's all these beautiful pictures they had, but then you go to Travelocity and it's like pictures of the bathtub from the mountain and the place is gross. Yeah. We trust Google because inherently we think a business is trying to sell us their service.
Yes. No, you're right.
Colin, this is your podcast. Sorry.
No. Listen, I love this. I'm very happy. I think, from my perspective that And I agree with Brent 100% that there are pluses and minuses. I think the way that we need to look at this is an opportunity on the dealer side of it to say, how do we ensure that we are merchandising our dealership, right? We always talk about merchandising our vehicles properly. How are we merchandising our dealership? And we have focused on the left-hand side of the page, right? That is still why your website's exceptionally important, okay? At this point in time, Google doesn't allow you, and yes, you might have heard it here, folks, first. They are beta testing at this point some things where you actually just list your inventory right on Google. This, I think, is about the 5th iteration of this test that they've been doing. They never rolled it out before, and now they're finally maybe rolling it out. There are some vendor partners out there that already have the capabilities to do this. I don't know who they are, but you guys can ask around dealers and see. Maybe you can get on the test. But the fact of the matter is this. Google obviously sees the importance of having all of that information, right? Listing inventory, having all the dealership information, websites, contact us, phone, directions, whatever it is. Dealers, I would just say this. That left-hand side of the page isn't going anywhere anytime soon. You still need a website that can, at least when someone does some organic searches, have multiple ways that person can access your dealership and the main service or main profit centers. If you look at a standard organic Google listing, if you just type in your dealership name, and here's a good activity for those listening. If you just type in your dealership name, obviously you're in your market. Hopefully if your organic, presence is good enough, you will be one of the first results up there, aside from maybe a paid result, but you will see different site links that populate. Look at what your site links are. Is it new vehicle inventory, used vehicle inventory, schedule service, finance center, finance application? These are the main profit centers that you will still always need to dominate the left-hand side of the page. Now, yes, you do need to focus on the right-hand side of the page, but I wouldn't see it as a daunting task. I'd see it as a welcome. All right, let's do this. Let's make sure we can optimize this so we can have both sides of the page, right?
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%, Colin. Because again, like you said, your website's not going anywhere anytime soon. Don't lose focus on that, but don't miss the opportunity just because because I want everybody to go to my website, so let's ignore Google My Business. That doesn't make sense, right? The right answer is, optimize both, right? I don't know where consumers want to find my info. Yeah, I don't care. I'll put it out in either spot.
And that's it. So you need that both, right? I mean, you can't talk about it enough because obviously it's one of the things in the industry. But hey, let's talk about digital retailing or virtual retailing. We're talking about giving people the options on ways to do things. There's going to be customers that still want to do the vehicle purchase the old-fashioned way. There's going to be people that want a hybrid of online and in-store, and then there's people that will be 100% online. What we understand now, or at least the forward-thinking dealers, is that they need to provide the opportunities for customers to do the deal the way they want, in the same fashion that with how they're actually accessing our business information, whether it's via just walking into the dealership showroom, finding a dealership website, or going to the Google My Business. I think we just need to think of it as, here are other ways, other avenues that we can get more exposure.
No, for sure. And it's always, a smart idea. Don't try to force customers down the path that you want them to go, right? And say, like, this is how I want you to interact with me. They'll tell you, and be open and be flexible, and you'll get more customers that way.
No, I love it. So now, that's a great segue, because we've talked about the customer. We talk about not forcing the customer down the path that necessarily the dealer wants. But there's some things that you can probably glean or learn from what we're going to talk about, what your article was about. But that is user-generated content, or UGC, and how a dealer can then leverage that user-generated content on their Google My Business profile to increase the visibility, the awareness, so on and so forth. So without further ado then, user-generated content. There was something I learned in your piece, which I know we'll dig into here, but all the different types of user-generated content. And that was fascinating to me, I will tell you that. So first, user-generated content, what is that?
Well, and that was the impetus for the article was, as you talk to different people, they would refer to this as user-generated content. And you talk to somebody else, they'd be like, no, this is user-generated content. And you're like, well, wait, like, and it is the word user is a little bit, in as we talk about, marketing with dealers and their shoppers, is a little confusing, right? So that was the point of the article. So like, well, let's bring this out and kind of divide it up so it makes sense to people. In most cases, I think, if you're thinking about, someone's using a mobile app, the users are the people using the app. Here we're talking about consumers that are buying from you, but there's lots of ways to get consumer generated content on your website. So I think in most of the time, people think of user generated content, they think of the customers. In our case, I'm like, yeah, but if a corporate dealership is posting, we know what like OEM content looks like or more branding content. Well, what about pictures of your happy customers? Like that's the customers, but the dealer took it. You know what I mean? Well, so is it user generated or not? And that's where I broke it out and said, let's think of this as dealer generated content, right? Which might have customers in it, might not. And consumer generated content, which is the customers themselves are going to be posting this content to Google and other places. Yeah. And so that was the breakout.
No, I love that. So yeah, we have the two types. We have the customer generated or consumer generated, and then we have the dealer generated, which to me, like I just thought it's one, user generated. Hey, it's someone took a picture of their delivery, they're happy, they put it out there. That's user generated content. That's earned advertising on behalf of the dealer, essentially. Now we talk about that though. So you kind of alluded to a couple different things on or what constitutes that. But consumer generated content. So we're saying, a picture that a customer maybe has taken of their vehicle at their home. And we just had an experience with this yesterday. Someone bought a vehicle from one of our dealerships, left the dealership lot, or we might have delivered the vehicle. And then the person took a picture of the vehicle in their driveway at their house and then tagged us on Facebook and all of that and said, thank you so much for the experience, blah, blah, blah. So that's user generated content, correct?
It is. I think that's
consumer generated. Excuse me.
Yes, consumer generated content, and that's the most typical example. The interesting thing with Google My Business, there's multiple places to submit content, right? If we have a broad definition of content, that's one example, right? You can submit photos, right? Here's a photo of me in front of my new Jeep or whatever it is. If I write a reviews content, right? So all those reviews, that's consumer generated content right there, and that's a big part. The question and answer section on Google My Business, right? If I'm like how many pre-owned trucks do you have in the lot? That's still content. Other people will read the question. They'll read the dealer's answer. That might be like, we have the largest selection of pre-owned trucks in this,
Of course you do.
Right? But then you're like, hey, that little snippet of conversation that was, user or consumer generated content, dealers supplementing it. So there's lots of places on Google My Business for that content to come into play.
Right, to live. So here's an interesting thing. I recently learned, I believe actually it was at this past NADA, so the digital NADA, but I was listening to one of the speakers there and they had mentioned the FAQs. And I thought to myself, wow, that's a great opportunity for a dealer to essentially go in, put in, whatever questions that a customer might be asking now in this day and age. Now let's talk about some of those potential questions for the dealers out there. What are the COVID protocols at this dealership? Are there COVID, precautions in place? Does this dealership deliver vehicles? Does this dealership facilitate online vehicle purchases? Now, let me ask you this, Brent, and I don't know, I would hope you have the information. If you don't, that's okay, because then we got another episode that we can do. But do you know, are there any SEO value or added value that we know of now? Because this would be new to me and I want to learn that when someone puts in an FAQ like that, and let's say, for example, they do talk about online purchasing or COVID protocols or delivery or something like that, do we know if Google looks at that favorably, saying, all right, let me show this dealership because they actually answered that question?
I feel like they do. I don't know that, I know the exact answer of the SEO value of a question and answer, but we do know both Facebook and Google measure speed of response and sort of percent of response to consumer questions, reviews, inquiries. Like that all helps boost the value of your page. I would be surprised if answering the Q&A doesn't benefit you in some way, but I don't know if there's SEO value from that standpoint. But yeah, we have dealers and we do it for some on our own where what you talked about, we call it seeding the Q&A section, and we're like, you should seed your Q&A. Pick 3 to 5 questions that either they're very common and lots of people ask them, or it's something you want to promote. we've never delivered vehicles in the past. We do now. I want to get a little plug in there somehow. Then I'll put in my own question of, do you deliver? And then, vehicles. And then I'll post my own answer of, yes, we deliver. Like, and now you get to highlight that. So,
right.
So no, I think it's a good area to take advantage of.
And I think that's an unknown area. So awesome tidbit of information. Now let me ask you this, because it's sure you can obviously go out and hire Friendemic, which we highly recommend you do that. We have Brent on here. He's on the dealer marketing panel. I mean, there's definitely ways you guys can get in touch with Friendemic and Brent. The fact of the matter is this though, if as a dealer, we're aware of the FAQs and we say, all right, we're going to ask our own questions. Is the best way to go about it is from the dealer profile, actually ask the question, then answer as the dealer? Or for my purpose, should I say to, I'll just throw something out there, Nielsen Dodge, as my Colin, my personal Gmail, and be like, hi, Nielsen Dodge, how do you do this? And then Nielsen Dodge answers. That's the right answer. Yeah, you don't want to post it obviously from the dealer, right. But everybody at the dealership or so many of them will have a Gmail account. Yeah. Right. So somebody can post a question on sort of behalf. And I haven't heard anything from Google plus or minus on posting a question that way. And that is right or wrong, but it works. And
your friend Matt will do it for you.
There you go. Yeah.
Just give me the questions.
That's it. Matt will do it. But yeah, no, so that's really incredible. So, I mean, obviously just going back to the topic, user generated content. So we have the consumer generated content. Like you said, the most popular ones are obviously, photos, reviews, the FAQs. The FAQs, photos can be dealer generated also. We would hope that the reviews aren't dealer generated.
No, for sure.
Then dealer shame
That's
on you.
No. Yep.
But also, I'll say a bonus type. It's you had mentioned the manufacturer generated content. So, I mean, yeah, usually dealers can tell the difference and probably even consumers. Actually, I don't know though. I heard something recently where consumers really don't know the difference between the tier 1 advertising and kind of messaging down to the tier 3 level. I get it, like down to tier 3, it becomes more specific to the special that's going on, the Grand Slam savings event or whatever it is. But actually, I've heard, and I could be wrong, that the consumers really don't see that difference. It's what's ever advertised on like either the tier 1, tier 2 level. They see that, they'll go to the dealership website, they'll see then what's available there, and they really don't care about the other promotion. Is that anything that you can?
I think that's true. I think there's, and that's why it's really important for a dealership to use some what we'll call the manufacturer OEM type content, because you want some continuity, right? The last thing you want is consumers to see all these national ads, and you go to the dealership and there's completely different messaging. Everything you saw from the national is not reflected in the dealership at all, right? That's not a good experience. So there is room for OEM, / manufacturer content. I was really interested. One of our Toyota clients shared this with me last week. Toyota has a new portal for the dealers, and they can go on and they have all kinds of different content that you can select your preferences of the type of content you like from Toyota. You can connect your Google My Business page, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, select a frequency, and they will post the OEM content. Now, again, it's going to be a little more general because it's coming from corporate. But if you think, in our conversation of dealer-generated content from consumers, the OEM content, you can all right, at least I checked the box. That content's done. Right. You know what I mean? It comes from Toyota. It automatically goes to Google My Business. Now I can focus on my dealer-generated content and work it that way. But I thought it was really interesting that Toyota's, built that portal. It's taking that step.
That's awesome. There's a similar, it's GM. So we have a Chevy store, and this is the only reason why I know this, but they have their relationship in place with a company called Promo Box. And Promo Box, there you go. Promo Box does the same thing. I don't think it does the Google My Business, which would really be taking it to the next level. But essentially on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, it will push down that tier 1 content to the site, which for some dealers, once you check that box, that kind of is that security, what is it, security net, comfort blanket, whatever it is. I mean, because you say, hey, at least I have some content that is being put out there, if your social strategy is something that you need to work on, right? You say, hey, I need to generate more content, whether it's the dealer generated content, trying to garner more user generated or consumer generated content, and then of course the OEM content. But that's social. It's awesome to hear that Toyota has obviously made the move into Google My Business. Toyota sees what's going on, folks. So, see if you can emulate that, if you can kind of mirror that strategy, because that's where everything's going. So next, we talked about all the different types of content, consumer generated content. I'll tell you this, I don't know, it's very relevant. I don't know, Brent, if you're in the Facebook Automotive Marketing Collective group. If you're not, you got to be in there. It's a great place to be. Headed up by Bob Lanham, head of automotive retail at Facebook, and the Facebook team. Really great group. I think it's now, 2,000 or 3,000 people strong, all in the automotive space, vendors, dealers, what have you. Anyway, there was a question that was asked in that group just yesterday, and it was a gentleman who's trying to put together a project for his stores where every person that essentially gets sold a vehicle, every delivery, he is trying to get a photo of that delivery. And the gentleman asked about whether or not it was okay to post that many pictures on his Facebook page, or if he should actually create another Facebook page just for happy customers and so on and so forth. And the conversation that erupted out of that, it's incredible. I mean, what you see on there, there's people that are saying, yeah, it's a great idea. People saying you're going to kill your organic value. People saying, absolutely not. I chimed in, and I'll make you happy. I said, hey, you should probably post that stuff on Google My Business and have all these photos, because that's going to keep looking, Google's going to look at that favorably. Hey, you keep updating your algorithm on GMB, and it's going to really boost that. Now, how do we get all that user generated content? I mean, long story short, short story long. How do you do it? Do you just ask for it? What do you do?
Yeah, I think you have to have a process in place, and really you should do that with reviews too. Right. Well. I know every dealer's got like some kind of automated system to send out a text or an email to ask for a review. But as a sales rep, right, we got tons of time while we're waiting for financing, waiting for vehicle to be prepped or something like that. Hey, would you, love if you'd leave feedback on your experience. At the same time, you could be like, can I take a photo of you in front of your vehicle? Right. You've got a few minutes somewhere in that whole process to ask. It's just a training issue, I think, to get that as a procedure. And then, as you kind of hinted at, one, we want it to be able to post it, but we want to share it with them. Maybe they'll, post it on their page. Right. You can't just, count on every customer to post photos for you. So I think then you post them on your own too, just because that you can control.
Yeah, no, and I think, inherently, I feel like people are obviously very social beings, right? And I feel like they want to share their achievements or accomplishments, and buying a vehicle is like buying a home. It's something that you say, hey, look what I just did, and if you had a good experience, you would share it. So I feel like dealers that aren't asking or are afraid to ask or don't have that process in place, as you had mentioned, you're actually really missing out on a tremendous earned advertising opportunity, because if you did right by the customer, one, they should be leaving you a positive review, whether it's on Google My Business or on Facebook or, whatever, DealerRater, Cars.com, all these different outlets. Okay. It's all very important. But the picture itself, them sharing it then on their social profiles, which you can then leverage that picture, obviously, on Google My Business. I mean, let's not lose sight of the main conversation today about Google My Business, but the numbers game that just comes from that. Now, their entire network, is seeing that, hey, they had a great experience at their local dealership. And most likely the people in their network are in the same market as the dealership's in, right, as they're in. And that's just such a tremendous opportunity to get earned exposure, to have those people come in and then do the same thing. And it's kind of like this domino effect, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not like that. It's not as hard as I think dealers think it is. Yeah. And it's not as objectionable for the consumer. Right now, in old days, right, when you're wrapping up a sale and you're like, hey, here's this 10-page printed survey. Would you fill this out, put it in an envelope, mail it back to me? You're asking people to do something that they don't normally do. Yeah, it's extra work on their part. But would you say hey, can we take a picture? I'll share it with you. I don't know. Will you be on social media in the near time future? And of course, They'll be like, I'll be on social media in the next 10 minutes.
I'm already on it. Right?
I'm on right now. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
You're not asking people to do something that they're uncomfortable with or that they don't do multiple times a day. Like, they share photos every day nonstop on their phone. So it's a very easy ask. And I think everybody thinks like, oh, it's, for me to ask Matt, hey Matt, can I, give you this picture? Like, would you maybe post it? Like, I'm not asking a huge favor. Like,
right.
They're just like, yeah, sure, done. Right. That's how long it'll take them to do.
I think that's really important. I'll leave it with this. My general manager, my supervisor always says, you don't get unless you ask. So for all those listening out there, absolutely ask for that picture, because you can then put it on your Google My Business. You can put it on your social channels. You can have the people that you just sold it to might share it on their social channels. And there's just a tremendous, tremendous power to that. It adds that human element to the dealership, that fun experience. It's just really, really powerful. A picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So, Brent, as we do with all people, we're going to ask you to pull out the crystal ball. Matt, did you get a crystal ball? Is that what you're reaching for?
It's not in the budget.
You're
Sorry.
just itching your shoulder.
Yeah,
I
my
thought you
shoulder
got a
itches.
crystal ball. I was going to be very impressed.
Not in the budget.
So we're going to ask you to pull out the crystal ball, Brent. What do you think is coming next to Google and Google My Business?
It's, and I'm sure they've got a lot more ideas that we haven't even thought of yet. But, you mentioned the inventory integration. Right. So you expect to see that roll out big, and right now it's just on mobile. You'll see it on the desktop, but that's just a single integration. And I go back to my restaurant example. I can go and they integrate with OpenTable, so I can make a reservation right from the Google My Business page.
Right.
But on the dealer, if I want to make a service appointment, I click the appointments link, I go to the website and go to the dealer thing. That's not as easy, right? That's multiple steps. So I would think, look for things like, integrations of some kind of scheduling. Like if I'm on the Google My Business page, I ought to be able to schedule a test drive right from Google My Business, and certainly schedule a service appointment, right? Calendars can integrate. We know the restaurants can do it, then auto can do it. I think just see more integrations so that you can, again, without going extra clicks, I can just, interact with the dealer directly from GMB. But that's what I would think would be coming.
No, I think that's a really, really accurate guess. Definitely with your expertise and educated guess. The only other thing I would add on to that, which is in the same realm, I think, and we kind of got this hint. We were on a Google call the other day, and basically it was about, hey, any sort of preference to dealers that are offering online retailing. And when I say preference, it's, will they be looked upon more favorably, because Google's now about providing an experience. It's a consumer experience outlet now. So the answer, although the runaround, answer was definitely make your website and your dealer capabilities focused on consumer and online retailing. So I wouldn't be surprised with above and beyond what you're talking about with service scheduling and reserving test drives. You're definitely probably going to see some sort of online retailing integration where people will start being able to build their deals out right from Google. And it almost makes you think, Brent, do you think you're going to need just a Google sales specialist dedicated to Google at some point in time?
Yeah. The volume of searches on a Google My Business page,
Crazy,
the
right?
number of photos and directional requests that all come from that page is so high. Yes, you could even, we're not very far right now to have, like, I'm just gonna have somebody that focuses on everything that comes from Google, and you could do it.
Yeah. So awesome. Well, we really appreciate it, Brent. Always a great conversation. Thank you so much. For everyone that wants to check out the article that Brent wrote, dealermarketing.com. You can check it out. Brent's an expert panelist on there, has his contact information, so you can bother him with all of your questions.
Hello. Yep. Happy to.
There you go. And awesome, Brent. Thank you so very much. Thank you for your predictions. We will see on the next time that you have come on the show and grace us with your presence where we're at with Google My Business. All right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Colin, Matt. You guys take care.
Hey,
Sure.
Take care, Brent. Thank you. Wow.
You know what they say, Colin?
What do they say?
It's Google's world. We're just living in it.
We're just living in it.
Yep.
This Google's world, man.
That's what they say.
It's crazy though. This is the thing. And I was going to say it when Brent was still on, but that's okay. I'll say it now. It's this is what makes the industry, and at least my job, and I'm sure your job and Brent's job, what's so exciting. Because I'm going to equate it to like explorers, right? Like exploring uncharted territory, uncharted land. We're like, oh yeah, next thing you know, Google's going to be the spot where you're just going to be able to buy your car from Google. And now dealers are going to have to say, all right, well, I need to focus my power on making sure my Google My Business and my Google presence and all of that is optimized and where it needs to be so I can continue doing business. But that's fun. Isn't this fun?
Yeah, we're like Lewis and Clark.
We're like Lewis and Clark.
From the 1800s.
Right.
Yeah.
Lewis and Clark of the 21st century.
That's right.
Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for joining Matt and I and Brent Albrecht, of course, from Friendemic on the show. Episode 19. Stay in touch with us. Like us and follow us on Facebook. Just like us in general. And subscribe on YouTube. It's our respective podcast names, Experimarketing, mostly automotive marketing with Matt Wilson. And then, of course, connect on LinkedIn. We always want to hear from you, dealer community. Colin Carrasquillo out.